Welcome to The Source, where we combine the headlines with in-depth conversations with the newsmakers themselves. Today on the program, all hands on deck as the government braces for the impact of the U.S.-Iran conflict.
We have so many millions, nearing 3, I think, of Filipinos working mainly in the Middle East. Kinakabahan ako.
The president ordering the military to be ready if escalating tensions call for repatriation.
Lahat ng assets that can be utilized for the evacuation of our countrymen doon sa lugar ng may tensyon sa gitnang silangan, iihanda nila.
What are the contingency plans in place for Filipinos working in the Middle East?
I'm sure yung grupo ng economic managers natin, meron silang ginagawa.
And an update on the partial deployment ban following the death of overseas Filipino worker Jeneline Villavende in Kuwait. Overseas Workers Welfare Administration Chief Hans Cacdac and defense analyst Jose Custodio join us live. Thank you for joining us. I'm Pinky Webb. President Rodrigo Duterte admits being deeply worried as rising tensions between the United States and Iran may endanger the lives and livelihood of thousands, if not millions, of Filipinos in the Middle East. The president warns that a looming threat of violence may escalate after the U.S. military killed a top Iranian military official. He also orders the military to brace for any need to repatriate Filipinos from the region. Let's go straight to the source of the story, defense analyst Jose Custodio. Good to have you again, sir. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you.
All right, so what kind of scenario are we looking at now?
Well, most likely we would have a lot of military action in Iraq, okay? It still remains to be seen if Saudi Arabia or the other countries where there are large concentrations of Filipinos will be affected by whatever fighting that happens there. So what, for example, Duterte is saying is that there is the fear of the spillover, and if a spillover actually happens, then what are they going to do? What is the government going to do regarding the millions of Filipinos who are in the adjacent countries?
Right. But give us more information why you said the first problem would definitely be Iraq.
Well, because that's the theater of operations now. Like that's where Iran is heavily influencing the Iraqi government to the extreme annoyance of the United States, because the United States had originally intended that Iraq will be its own image. But what happened instead was that the war had dragged on for more than a decade. In fact, it is America's second longest conflict that it's been involved in. And what are the results? Nothing much to speak of. They never found weapons of mass destruction. Iraq practically descended into anarchy, and they lost more than 4,500 soldiers killed, with many thousands of American soldiers maimed. And now Iran sensed, when the height of the ISIS rebellion, the ISIS uprising in 2014, Iran sensed that it's an opportune time to enter Iraq and bring Iraq to our orbit, so into their influence. And when that happened, they were very successful. In fact, Iraq now practically is almost like an Iranian province.
So let's talk about Iraq, because you're saying that this could possibly be the first conflict or problem, the country of Iraq. No?
Yeah.
So when we look at the number of Filipinos, of course we're concerned about the number of Filipinos there before we even go to the Middle East as a whole, Saudi Arabia. In Iraq, so far, and Iran, we have a total of more than 7,000 Filipinos. Mr. Custodio, yung mga Pilipino ho ba ngayon sa Iraq, dapat na ba silang i-repatriate? Dapat ba umalis na sila doon?
Well, there has always been conflict there, okay? The areas, it's not as if the entire Iraq will turn into the gates of hell, okay? It's more on like there are certain areas that there will be conflict, and those Filipinos in Iraq are practically used to it already by now. I mean, they lived through the ISIS uprising, which practically almost engulfed the country. So the Philippine mission in Iraq already knows the drill what to do with such crisis situations. And if they can sense it's already getting out of hand, then they will implement proactive measures to bring out those people who are in harm's way.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a very skilled team that operates in Iraq and even Syria. You know, there will always be a situation where they will have to extricate, because you can't really control the minds of so many people. Some would want to stay, but when they stay,
Alam nila yung panganib. Yeah,
alam
they know
nila.
the threat.
And
yeah.
then the Philippine mission will also ensure that
Right.
if they are in harm's way, they will try to extricate them. And usually they will talk with all sides, you know, to negotiate so that the Filipino national who is stuck in a combat area can be brought out.
But you said that one way or another, they're kind of used to a situation
Yeah.
of tension. Does that mean that it'll be completely up to them, of course, and government, whether they will leave or not, ano? But this is a little bit different, possibly, from what they've been used to in the past couple of years. Because
Look, like I said, the ISIS nothing would beat the ISIS uprising of 2014 when city after city was collapsing. When the Iraqi army practically collapsed against the ISIS army. In this case, one would expect the U.S. to be a bit, despite the rhetoric of Trump, one could expect the U.S. to be very selective in its attacks, and it would be predominantly against Iranian-backed militias.
strongholds, yeah.
Okay, it's another thing to think. It's another thing if targets in Iran will be attacked. Okay?
Yeah,
That's an
yeah.
entirely different ballgame
Yeah,
already.
yeah. Because again, as I was mentioning a while ago, just to put a number to this, Iran and Iraq, Filipinos living there, we have about 7,000 of them. Pero what we're trying to understand is why, aside from that, is that kahit the president ay nangangamba na daw because of the situation, for example, in Saudi Arabia. Give us a sense, help us understand the situation.
Well, in such situations, there's always the danger of spillover or of attacks outside of the combat area. Like, for example, if you go back to the original Gulf War or Desert Storm, which was when you were still a kid, okay, long time ago, 1991, when I was 30 old. In that situation, Iraq fired missiles at Saudi Arabia, despite the fact that Kuwait was the combat area. Why? Because Saudi Arabia had a lot of U.S. facilities there. Okay, and the thing is that it was also meant to distract and weaken the coalition effort against it, so that they will be now constant. They even hit Israel. So in a situation where there is general conflict between the U.S. and Iran, one can expect Iran to try to hit American installations around it in any country.
And in Saudi Arabia.
In Saudi Arabia, there are a lot of, and the thing is that the Iranians, as compared to the Iraqis in 2003, the Iranians are more capable than the.
And isn't it true that there is a mutual defense treaty? Is that true between Saudi Arabia and the United States?
Well, they're bound to each other, okay. And the thing is that, given the fact that the Saudi Arabia is a major oil-producing country, and any disruption to it will affect not just countries in the region, but globally. It will even affect us if there's a disruption. And that's also another basic fear, is that that Iran will move forcefully in the Straits of Hormuz, okay, and to interrupt and to disrupt oil, the oil transport.
But
and
what would be which country do you think would be the priority concern?
Well, it still would be Iraq, okay, in terms of actual conflict. Okay?
For now?
For now, it still would be Iraq, okay. The thing is that if, let's say, Iran retaliates, or Iranian-backed militias retaliate, because it was the thing that it wasn't Iran formally that would be causing, that would be directly killing or eliminating the U.S. Presence in Iraq or soldiers in Iraq. It was actually Iranian-backed but militias. But
Yeah.
the thing is that the U.S. hit an Iranian officer. So,
in Iraq, yeah.
it was a direct attack on an Iranian officer. So
Right.
now that removes the buffer. So you have Iran and Iraq now facing, and the U.S. facing off. So if the U.S. really did it, they might do it again. Okay, and that would bring in a lot of problems.
But
like-
the thing is really, I guess what is probably a threat right now, or the question remains, what kind of retaliatory attack
Yep.
will Iran implement?
Well, if it can use its proxies, okay, to stage terrorist attacks in Iraq or in other places where there is a significant Shiite presence,
Yeah.
okay, they can do that, or they can use if depending on the situation, they can launch a few missiles of their own into certain countries, okay, just to attack if they are attacked also by the U.S.
So
Yeah.
right now, it's really having to wait and see what will
Yes, what
happen
will-
next,
yes,
right?
yes, yes.
But of course, you have the United States definitely on the defensive and possibly also on the offensive as well.
Yes, yes, because of the fact that there is this situation we have now with Trump, who tended to not think like
Okay.
us.
Yeah.
Yeah, not think as usually or not approach a problem as had been traditionally been done.
So there's a question really in general. What is the effect of this to us? Tayo muna. Are we just looking at number one, the OFWs? And there are two things really. Definitely the safety of the OFWs, and number one is the kind of effect this would have on the oil prices.
Yes.
Okay.
Usually that would be it. I mean, I doubt that. Or there's a third one also, is that sympathy attacks also. Because one thing is that you have terrorist groups here also, okay? And many of these terrorist groups are actively searching for financial assistance, okay? And despite the fact that they are not Shiites, okay? They're most of the Sunni type here. The thing is that they can still be used and manipulated by Iran to take out targets of or soft targets.
Should
here.
we be concerned now here in the country?
Intelligence should be monitoring that already. The influx of money towards groups here that could be used to attack American interests here, because we also have a large American footprint here in terms of civilians as well as military.
All right. Thank you to defense analyst Jose Custodio. Thank you, sir. We'll be taking a short break. Coming up, the repatriation process for Filipinos who may possibly be affected by the tensions in the Middle East. OWA Administrator Hans Cacdac tells us more after the break. This is The Source on CNN Philippines. Please stay tuned. You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. The president holds an emergency meeting with the country's top military officials to ensure the safety of Filipinos working and living in the Middle East. He also urged Congress to discuss how the conflict will impact Filipinos in the region. The president also wants to make sure that there will be enough funds to assist Filipinos in the Middle East. There's so much to talk about this. Let's go straight to the source of the story. Overseas Workers Welfare Administrator Hans Cacdac. Administrator, good to see you again. Maraming salamat
Morning,
po sa inyong
Pinky.
oras. Okay, let's go doon sa sinabi po ni Mr. Custodio. Area of concentration, possibly right now, he analyzes, is going to be Iraq. When we look at Iraq, let's clarify that. We're not just talking about OFWs, but Filipinos as a whole. Ilan ho ba mga Pilipino sa Iraq? Sabi po nila, it's about 6,000.
About 6,000 based on the DND, Department of National Defense figures. The workers in Iraq will obviously be less than 6,000. Estimates would be 3,000 to 4,000, including the undocumented. Kasi as you know, there's a deployment ban to Iraq. So maraming mga Pilipino doon, lalo na sa northern part, in Kurdistan, where it's relatively peaceful, na nagtatrabaho, service sector usually sila.
Apo.
So maraming undocumented coming. The phenomenon usually is they come from other countries, Middle
And
East, and jump from there to Iraq.
Has anyone, what is the sentiment, if you know any administrator, ng kanilang nangangamba na ho ba sila? Tama ho ba yung sinabi din ni Mr. Custodio that one way or another, sanay naman po sila sa tensyon?
Yes, I think so. We've been coordinating with the DFA. In fact, there will be another meeting today. And so far, we know that the DFA is extending all efforts to reach out to the Filipino communities. I was there about 4 or 5 years ago, and I saw firsthand for myself yung outreach ng DFA sa mga Filipino communities, kahit na undocumented.
In Iraq?
Yes. And so far, true to the resilient form of Filipinos, so far, wala namang masyadong negative, should I say, feedback from the Filipino community in a sense that they are in a panic mode. Wala namang ganun.
Really?
Yes.
So they're not panicking. They're not saying gusto na namin umuwi. Kunin niyo na kami dito.
I think the key is talagang nauna yung government outreach, yung direktiba ng Pangulo na kailangan na talagang magplano, mag-prepare. Si Sec Bello has reactivated the crisis management team at the DOLE to coordinate with OFWs, OFW families, as well as related government agencies.
Let me cut you there, sir. What can the crisis management team do now that it's activated, as you said? And for the families who are possibly watching us now na nangangamba sa mga kapamilya po nila abroad, paano po kaya ang posibleng ugnayan between the two?
Let me start with the hotlines. Yung communications is 1349 hotline sa DOLE, 1348 sa OWA. So one of the two hotlines. The family members or OFWs can communicate with us if they need any help, any questions, or if one would already want to be voluntarily repatriated. Kung meron ng pangamba o kaya may plano naman din talagang umuwi na, so baka pwede nang i-timing dito in that sense. So voluntary repatriation. Unahan na, that's right. Meron coordination with the government agencies. As you know, this is a political security issue. So we have to keep in close tabs with the DFA and the DND kasi they are the experts in political security matters. And the DOLE, OWA, POEA will be there to help facilitate yung repatriation first and foremost. So meron na rin tayong mga tao who are veterans in terms of repatriations in Libya, in Syria, in Lebanon. So we know what we can do in terms of assisting the DFA and DND in this regard.
Meron na ho bang tumawag at nagsabing gusto na nila umuwi?
Wala pa so far. Wala pa akong alam so far. But I know meron na mga nagtatanong. Meron ng mga starting to wonder or ask questions about how they could want or could wish to manifest yung kanilang desire to come home. But I think it's safe to say na at this stage, kailangan magpakilala na yung mga tao doon sa Iraq.
Right.
To contact the embassy, to contact the DFA, Facebook, Twitter pages ng DOLE, DFA, and OWA. Make yourselves known. Para,
identify yourselves, your location,
that's
etc.
Right. Identity, location.
And your family back here. Yeah.
Yes, and contact numbers.
Yeah. Wala pa hong, I take it there's no repatriation set in place right now. Wala pa po.
Mass repatriation, we are preparing for it. And as I said, it's been done before, so we can definitely do it again. We wish we didn't have to do it again, but yes, we're ready for mass repatriation.
And how do you actually mass repatriate, let's say, 6,000, or let's put it at 7,000 Filipinos in Iraq and Iran?
Yeah, the usual way is, of course, the first one is to know the terrain. No? So as I said, where the people are located, and I'm sure the DFA, we have embassies in both Iran and Iraq. So I'm sure the DFA will have the information as to where the Filipino community members will be located. And then the second part is knowing where they are, is how to bring them in or round them up and bring them to the necessary escape routes or points. So there will be identified escape routes or points within Iraq, within Iran, to fly them out by land, by sea, or by air into safe places and then onward to the Philippines.
Help us understand the situation, Administrator. How difficult or how easy would this be? Kasi right now, we're looking at 7,000 Filipinos. And when we go to Saudi Arabia or the Middle East, in Saudi Arabia, you have about OFWs numbering 1.2 million, more or less. Ito 6,000 to 7,000 lang, and possibly these are the Filipinos we should possibly concern ourselves, or government should concern themselves with right now.
Well, looking at the history of repatriations, pagka political security conflict, usually it's localized in one area, even if it involves an entire country, like in Libya. We know that only in certain pockets or areas nangyari yung violence and uprising, and I must say it's still happening now with the latest news. So yung area ng repatriation or those to be affected, hopefully if it follows the same pattern, will be localized, which means we might not need to repatriate the 2 to 2.5 million all at the same time.
In the Middle East?
Yes, in the Middle East. I think it would be the case that the reprisal or whatever will happen will be localized and centered only in a few areas, even if they would be in another country aside from Iraq or Iran.
I guess the next question would be also has the government been in touch with even the airlines for possible bringing home our kababayans from the Middle East? We'll have that answer after the break. We'll be right back. You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. Our guest today, Overseas Workers Welfare Administrator Hans Cacdac. Sir, what about airlines? Kasi sinabi na po ng Pangulo, you know, when you have the President saying, nangangamba ako, sometimes that's a good thing because government has to work faster to be able to help our kababayans. No? However, paano ho yan? Land, sea, air. Paano ho ang air assets?
Yeah.
So sabi nila C-130, but what about commercial planes?
Yeah, we've always had communication lines naman with the airlines. As I said, in past repatriations, we've had no trouble coordinating with the local airlines. So we're hoping again to tap them. May mga levels na tayo of coordination with them. But of course, the difference in this scenario is the President has clearly directed the AFP with its ship and air vessels to come in and help. So we will also coordinate with the Department of National Defense. In fact, nagpatawag si Sec Bello ng pagpupulong bukas. Of course, nagpulong na sila kagabi sa gabinete. But there will be another one tomorrow.
Absolutely. So you have commercial planes, you have the C-130, and I think also naval ships. But possibly this will have to be addressed to another person in authority, sir. The question remains is this. Government may want to repatriate Filipinos abroad. However, some of them would rather not. Why? Because there is no job waiting for them here, sir. How do you resolve a conflict like that? And how will you actually help Filipinos who might want to come home because of escalating tension in the Middle East?
Yeah, well, there are government programs in place. The Secretary has also tapped what's called the Trabaho Negosyo Kabuhayan program. It's a DOLE program that seeks to reintegrate or to facilitate employment of our citizenry. So, ito, sabi ni SEC, in-instructionan niya yung relevant agencies within the DOLE, Bureau of Local Employment, etc., to be there, to be part of the repatriation process in the sense that our workers, even before they come home, are already guided about the reintegration process, Trabaho Negosyo Kabuhayan process, when they come home. The TNK, as we call it, Trabaho Negosyo Kabuhayan, incidentally, is in partnership with the DTI.
Opo.
Sec Mon Lopez and the DTI. So,
Pasensya na ho kayo, I have to cut you. Ano hong trabahong naghihintay sa kanila dito?
Marami mga job openings, may mga key employment indicators, ang Bureau of Local Employment. Meron tayong jobs portal, meron tayong jobs PH portal as we speak. Pwedeng puntahan yung portal na yun, doon makikita yung vacancies. Job fairs will be facilitated and conducted. So there will be a TNK person or a booth or a desk in every area where the workers will come in or their families come in seek help.
It sounds good, Administrator, but the reason they don't come home is, number one, mas malaki ang kanilang kinikita abroad. So, let's be frank about here. Are they assured, number one, na magkakatrabaho sila? Let's be honest about it. And number two, ano ho yung range ng kanilang sweldong matatanggap sakaling bumalik po sila ng Pilipinas?
Well, that's true. We would probably be in a challenge, no, to match yung rates sa abroad. But here's the thing. I mean, they're coming home.
Yeah.
And they're coming home to a safe country. In fact, there's something in Facebook now that says that we are one of the possible safe havens, no? If something wrong comes up. So they're home, they're with their families, wala pong kapalit sa pera yun. They can start a new or restart a new life. The business opportunities are plentiful here these days. Yung build program, yung Pangulo, infrastructure building is in full swing.
Yeah.
So I would say there are opportunities. Of course, it's not a 100% guarantee because the job of government is to facilitate between the private actors. So we will try our best to make the employers in need and the workers coming home to meet up,
Yeah.
to match themselves. Yeah.
Okay. OWA Administrator Hans Cacdac. Sir, very quickly, yung kaso po ni Jeneline Villavende, kailan
Jeneline
ho ba?
Villavende.
Oo.
There are reports that she will be coming home soon. The investigation, or at least the autopsy or investigation with respect to her remains have been wrapped up. So she's set to come home very soon. And we hope also that the investigation itself will be concluded in a formal charge in court against the employer couple who is incarcerated.
When is soon, sir?
Next few days, so maybe tomorrow or the other day.
Na sana lumabas na po yung autopsy report at sana ma-charge na po. Yun ho ba yung
I
soon
meant
ninyo?
the repatriation.
Other repatriations of Jeneline's remains, hopefully by Wednesday.
Wednesday
Tama
or
ho ba?
Thursday.
Wednesday or Thursday.
The Kuwaiti ambassador told Sec Bello the other day that the investigation will wrap up 6 to 7 days. That was last week. So we hope
Has
that
to be
maybe
by
in the next
Friday,
few
sir.
days, yes.
All right. Maraming salamat kay OWA Chief Hans Cacdac. Thank you for joining us here on The Source. I'm Pinky Webb. You're watching CNN Philippines. But there is...